You don't attract anyone by chasing them. You attract them by becoming someone worth chasing. And if there's one truth people keep running from, it's this. The moment you stop flooding the world with your need for validation, you begin to radiate a power that others can't ignore. Men, especially, become deeply obsessed with the woman who refuses to hand over her attention like loose change. She becomes the rare presence in a world drowning in noise. She becomes the exception. And people don't forget the exception. There's something profoundly compelling about a person who refuses to rush toward what doesn't feel right. When she doesn't reach out first, when she doesn't beg to be noticed, she is communicating something fundamental. My time is valuable. My energy is precious. I don't give myself away for free. And that message, spoken or not, hits with the force of a truth the world desperately needs. In a society where people chase temporary distractions, she stands still, calm, grounded, disciplined. And that discipline is magnetic. You see, obsession doesn't grow from abundance. It grows from scarcity. When something is scarce, the mind locks onto it. It tries to decode it, understand it, capture it. That's why a woman who isn't constantly available becomes unforgettable, not because she's playing games, but because she has mastered herself. Her attention is deliberate. Her silence has weight. Her presence has structure. And people crave structure more than they realize. Most people live scattered, constantly seeking reassurance, constantly bending themselves into shapes they think others want. And every time they do this, they diminish their own value. But the woman who holds her center, the one who doesn't reach out first, the one who doesn't collapse into anxiety. When someone goes quiet, she does the opposite. She announces with her behavior, I don't chase uncertainty. I don't abandon myself. That kind of psychological solidity is rare, and rare things create desire. Men are drawn to challenge, not chaos. They are drawn to the woman who has arranged her life with intention, who hasn't outsourced her self-worth to someone else's attention. When she doesn't reach out first, it's not because she's cold, it's because she understands the cost of collapsing into neediness. She understands that if someone wants to be part of her world, they have to take steps toward her, not wait for her to fill the silence. She knows that connection requires reciprocity, not rescue missions. And here's the deeper truth. When you stop trying to convince someone of your worth, you create space for them to recognize it on their own. That recognition is far more powerful than anything you could force. Men don't obsess over the woman who chases them, they take her for granted. They obsess over the woman who challenges them to rise. The woman who demands that they bring clarity, effort, consistency. The woman who refuses to be another option on a crowded shelf. But understand this clearly. Strength isn't coldness. Boundaries aren't walls. The point is not to become distant or indifferent. The point is to become someone whose presence is defined, purposeful, and not dependent on external validation. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about protecting the part of yourself that makes you valuable in the first place. When you know your worth, your silence is never empty. It's full of meaning, and meaning is captivating. If you want to live a life that commands respect, romantically or otherwise, you must start with order. You must clean up your emotional habits. You must stop making your peace negotiable. You must learn to endure the discomfort of not being chosen immediately, because that endurance builds strength, and strength is what draws the world toward you. The woman who never reaches out first isn't relying on a trick. She's relying on a principle. If someone is meant to be in her life, they will show it through consistent action, not momentary attention. She's not afraid of losing someone who wasn't committed to staying. Her focus isn't on chasing, but on building herself, her purpose, her stability, her future. And that focus makes her unforgettable. Men don't obsess over the woman who tries to fill every silence. They obsess over the woman who respects herself enough to let silence speak. They don't obsess over the woman who leaps at every breadcrumb. They obsess over the woman who waits for real substance. They don't obsess over the woman who tries to prove she's worthy. They obsess over the woman who already knows she is. So stand your ground. Don't reach out first, not out of fear, but out of strength. Not to manipulate, but to elevate. Become the person who doesn't crumble under uncertainty. Become the person whose presence carries weight. Become the person whose value isn't up for negotiation. When you do that, obsession is not something you chase, it's something you naturally create. And the world will feel the difference. Self-respect creates gravitational pull. It pulls the world toward you in ways you can't fully see, but you can always feel. It's the quiet force that makes people stop, take notice, and rethink the way they approach you. And in a time where desperation has become normal, where so many people are willing to shrink themselves just to be chosen, the person who stands tall, who refuses to beg, who does not collapse into neediness, becomes unforgettable. Because self-respect is not simply a trait, it's a signal. It announces to others, without a single word, that your presence has value, your time has weight, and your energy is not a free resource for anyone to drain. People chase what feels stable, not what feels frantic. They are drawn to the one who moves with intention, who doesn't run after attention like it's oxygen, who isn't terrified of silence or distance. There is something uniquely powerful about a person who refuses to crumble the moment someone doesn't give them instant validation. Instead of reaching out first just to soothe anxiety, they stand firm, not cold, not detached, just grounded. And that groundedness becomes magnetic. It's psychological gravity pulling others closer without ever having to push. You see, obsession doesn't come from abundance. It comes from rarity. When someone can sense that you are not trying to impress them, not trying to win them, not trying to perform for their approval, they begin to wonder, what is it about this person that makes them so confident? What do they know that I don't? That curiosity becomes a powerful force. It becomes a loop in their mind. They replay over and over. Because most people hand out their attention recklessly, hoping someone will value them. But the one with self-respect, they choose where their attention lands. And choice is powerful. The person who never reaches out first isn't emotionally distant, they're emotionally disciplined. They don't use attention as currency to buy affection. They understand that anything real must be reciprocal, not one-sided desperation. They know that if someone wants to be part of their life, effort will come naturally, initiative will show itself, and intentions will become visible. They understand that chasing someone only teaches that person one thing: you don't have to try. I'll do both halves of the relationship myself, and nothing kills attraction faster than that. Self-respect is the refusal to carry the emotional weight of two people. It's the refusal to distort yourself in the hope that someone finally notices you. It's the quiet decision to value your inner peace more than you value temporary attention. When you choose that path, you will watch people begin to lean in. You will watch them become curious about you. You will watch them initiate, invest, and pursue, because they can feel that your validation cannot be cheaply earned. Your boundaries tell a story. You know who you are, and you refuse to be treated as an afterthought. There is a psychological shift that happens when you stop chasing. You begin to reclaim energy. You begin to focus on yourself, your work, your passions, your growth, your purpose. And that focus becomes attractive in ways reaching out could never replicate. People crave someone who is building something real, someone who is rooted in direction and clarity. When you are busy developing yourself, your silence becomes meaningful instead of empty. It becomes a reminder that your life is full, your priorities are clear, and you are not waiting around for someone to choose you. Self-respect makes you unpredictable, not because you're playing games, but because you cannot be controlled by someone else's inconsistency. And unpredictability within boundaries creates fascination. They don't know what you'll do next. because your behavior isn't tied to their approval, it's tied to your principles. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't fold. You simply live in alignment with your standards. And those standards create pressure, the kind that either makes someone show up properly or disappear. And both outcomes are victories. Many people spend their lives terrified of losing someone. But the one with self-respect understands something deeper. Losing someone who isn't choosing you is not loss, it's alignment. It frees your life from imbalance. It removes the weight of pretending. It opens space for someone who actually values you without being pushed. When you know your worth, you don't cling. You don't fear absence. You don't fear silence. You understand that silence reveals truth, and that truth is always better than illusions. In relationships, the one who respects themselves becomes the one who sets the tone. Their presence forces others to rise. Their standards create clarity. Their boundaries demand effort. People don't obsess over the one who chases them. They obsess over the one who challenges them to grow. They become captivated by the person who does not abandon themselves for affection. They become drawn to the individual whose life feels too structured, too focused, too self-governed, to be disrupted by emotional chaos. And here's the final truth. Self-respect isn't about being hard to get, it's about being hard to replace. You become irreplaceable when you live with intention, when you value your inner world, when you refuse to dilute yourself for temporary comfort. When reaching out first becomes something you do from confidence rather than fear, you stop living in emotional debt. You stop giving so much away. And the world feels your shift. Scarcity amplifies value. It sharpens attention, heightens desire, and transforms the ordinary into something unforgettable. The moment something becomes rare, the human mind begins to chase it, study it, crave it. And this principle applies to people more than anything else. When your time, your energy, your presence are rare, not because you're playing games, but because you live with purpose, your value rises effortlessly. People begin to notice what they once overlooked. They start to feel the weight of your absence. Scarcity forces them to confront a truth they may have ignored. You were never ordinary. They just never had to work for you. In a world where everyone is constantly available, constantly responding, constantly offering themselves before they're even asked, scarcity becomes power, not coldness, not ego, power. The kind of power that comes from knowing your worth so deeply that you refuse to hand yourself over cheaply. When you stop giving everyone unlimited access to you, something shifts. Your presence becomes something to earn. Your attention becomes something to value. Your silence becomes something to interpret. And that psychological shift rewires how others see you. Most people don't value what's always within reach. They don't cherish what's predictable, what's guaranteed, what's constantly trying to prove its worth. But remove it, pull it back, protect it, guard it, and suddenly it becomes meaningful. That's the human condition. We chase what requires effort. We pursue what tests us. We grow attached to what demands our discipline. And that's why the person who understands scarcity becomes unforgettable. They don't throw their energy at anyone. They don't chase validation. They don't try to maintain connections that are held together by one-sided effort. Instead, they let their scarcity speak. And it speaks loudly. Scarcity is not about being distant, it's about being intentional. It's about understanding that your life has space for only what aligns with your values, your direction, your peace. When you make your presence scarce, you are not withholding affection, you are filtering your environment. You are separating those who truly value you from those who want convenience. You are forcing others to show their intentions clearly because they know access to you must be earned, not assumed. And here is the psychological truth. When something is scarce, people try harder. They invest more. They appreciate more. They listen more closely. They show up with sincerity instead of entitlement. Scarcity eliminates the ones who are only there for easy attention. It exposes the ones who never planned to put in effort At the same time, it reveals the ones who are ready to meet you with intention, consistency, and respect. It acts as a sorting mechanism, removing the uncommitted and revealing the worthy. When your presence is scarce, your value becomes undeniable. You stop being an option, you become a standard. And standards create tension, the healthy kind, tension that makes people wake up and take you seriously. Tension that forces them to treat you differently. Tension that eliminates laziness and replaces it with effort. When someone knows that you are not endlessly available, they begin to prioritize you. They adjust. They step up. They become consistent, not because you demanded it, but because scarcity forced their hand. But scarcity requires discipline. It requires the courage to walk away from situations that drain you. It requires the strength to resist the urge to explain yourself endlessly. It requires emotional maturity to understand that not everyone deserves access to you. The world tells you to chase, to prove, to persuade, but scarcity teaches you the opposite. It teaches you to stand still, to allow others to step toward you, to allow effort to be the deciding factor, not chemistry, not fear, not attachment. And here's the part most people avoid. Scarcity exposes your own fears too. It forces you to sit with uncertainty. It forces you to confront the possibility that some people will leave when you stop overgiving. It makes you question whether your value is real or imagined. But if you can endure that discomfort, you emerge with something unshakable, self-worth, rooted in reality, not in desperation. Scarcity reveals who you become when you stop chasing. And who you become is someone powerful, someone grounded, someone that others cannot easily forget. Scarcity amplifies value because it demands choice. You stop pouring yourself into situations that give you nothing back. You stop allowing your energy to be wasted. You stop treating your life like a free resource. You become selective intentionally, not arrogantly. And that selectiveness transforms your relationships. It transforms your opportunities. It transforms the way people speak to you, treat you, pursue you. Because people respond differently to someone who respects their own time. People don't obsess over what's always there. They obsess over what challenges them to rise. They obsess over what makes them curious. They obsess over what feels earned. When you stop trying to be available to everyone, you create space for the right people to step forward. You create gravity. You create depth. You create meaning. Boundaries signal strength. They tell the world, without apology and without hesitation, exactly where you stand and what you will not allow. They are the invisible lines that shape your identity, preserve your dignity, and protect the parts of you that are not up for negotiation. When you enforce boundaries, you're not pushing people away, you're revealing your substance. You're showing that you take yourself seriously, that you value your time, that you refuse to shrink just to fit someone else's expectations. And that, in a world full of people who bend, break, and betray themselves just to be liked, is a rare and powerful form of strength. Most people fear setting boundaries because they fear losing others. They mistake compliance for connection. They think that saying yes to everything will keep them loved, appreciated, or chosen. But the truth is simple. The moment you abandon your boundaries is the moment others stop respecting you. If you do not protect your peace, if you do not defend your standards, if you do not make it clear where your limits lie, then you silently teach people that they can treat you however they want. And once that message is taught, it is very hard to unteach. People don't respect those who have no boundaries. They use them. They take advantage of their silence, their tolerance, their willingness to absorb disrespect. But when someone encounters a person who stands firm, who says, no, that's not acceptable, who refuses to participate in emotional chaos or inconsistency, they feel the shift. They feel the weight of someone who knows who they are. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about defining yourself. They're about deciding what kind of world you're willing to live in and who you're willing to share that world with. And this is why boundaries attract strong people and repel weak ones. The ones who only came for convenience leave. The ones who expected endless compromise walk. The ones who relied on your lack of self-respect to maintain the relationship lose their grip immediately. But the ones who value honesty, clarity, and strength, they rise. They adapt. They meet you at the level you set. Your boundaries filter your life. They remove what drains you and reveal what deserves you. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're unkind. It means you're responsible. It means you refuse to become a version of yourself that feels resentful, exhausted, or invisible. When you protect your limits, you protect your sense of self. And people instinctively respect those who respect themselves. Boundaries create an emotional structure, and structure creates trust. Without structure, everything collapses. Relationships, communication, self-worth. With structure, everything becomes clearer, stronger, more stable. The moment you start enforcing boundaries, something powerful happens inside you. You begin to feel grounded. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to realize that you don't have to tolerate disrespect to keep someone close. You don't have to sacrifice your identity to earn affection. You don't have to soften your voice just to avoid conflict. Boundaries turn uncertainty into clarity and clarity into confidence. You become harder to manipulate, harder to disturb, harder to derail emotionally. But boundaries require courage, not just once, but every day. They require the strength to repeat yourself, to walk away when needed, to endure discomfort in the short term for the sake of long-term peace. Setting a boundary often feels like losing control, but it's actually how you regain it. You're no longer reacting to others, you're directing your life. You're no longer controlled by fear of judgment or abandonment. You're guided by self-respect. And that internal alignment changes everything. How you speak, how you move, how you choose. The truth is, boundaries force people to reveal their real intentions. Someone who values you will respond with understanding. Someone who only valued your compliance will respond with anger. Either way, you gain clarity. You stop living in emotional confusion. You stop guessing. You stop hoping people will magically treat you better. You set the terms. You define the rules of engagement. You create a stable foundation where only those who truly belong can remain. Boundaries don't make you distant, they make you authentic. They allow your relationships to function on respect rather than fear. They make your yes meaningful and your no powerful. They allow you to show up fully, not as a watered-down version of yourself. The people who stay will stay because of who you are, not because of what you sacrifice. And here's the deepest truth. Boundaries are the language of strength. They are how you communicate your worth without ever having to say it out loud. They are how you ensure that your life is shaped by intention, not manipulation. They are how you protect your future from the chaos of others. They are how you become someone who cannot be pushed, pulled, or broken by inconsistency. Boundaries signal strength, and when you live by them, the world changes the way it approaches you. Not because you demanded respect, but because you demonstrated it to yourself first. Emotional discipline is the ultimate leverage. It is the force that separates those who crumble under pressure from those who rise with absolute clarity. It is the quiet mastery of your inner world, the refusal to let impulsive fear, insecurity, or desperation dictate your actions. When you have emotional discipline, you do not chase chaos, you do not react to every impulse, and you do not surrender your power to temporary feelings. You move with intention, you respond with thought, you act from strength, not panic. And in a world ruled by emotional impulsiveness, that discipline becomes an undeniable advantage. Most people are held hostage by their emotions. They reach out because they are anxious, not because they are certain. They cling because they fear loss, not because they see value. They break their own boundaries just to avoid discomfort. They speak when they should stay silent. They react when they should observe. They move too fast, give too much, reveal too early, all because they cannot endure the tension of waiting. But the one with emotional discipline, they wait, they breathe, they choose. They understand that emotional endurance creates power because it prevents temporary feelings from causing permanent mistakes. Emotional discipline isn't coldness, it's control. It's understanding that your feelings are real, but they are not always reliable. It's giving yourself space to think before you act, to reflect before you respond, to question your impulses before they lead you into situations that steal your peace. When you master your emotional triggers, you stop giving other people the ability to control you. You stop being manipulated by silence, inconsistency, or mixed signals. You stop falling apart every time someone pulls away. Instead, you stay centered. You stay grounded. You stay in charge of your own narrative. And that stability is magnetic. People are drawn to the one who doesn't explode under pressure, who doesn't fall apart during uncertainty, who doesn't react out of desperation. Emotional discipline makes you rare. It makes you unpredictable, not because you are playing games, but because you are not controlled by emotional chaos. You become the person others seek out for direction, for clarity, for strength. You become the anchor in a world full of storms. When you do not reach out first simply because your anxiety is loud, you communicate something powerful. I refuse to act from weakness. When you do not chase someone who pulls away, you send a message. I will not abandon myself for you. When you allow silence to speak instead of forcing connection, you show emotional maturity. People feel the difference. They recognize that you are not easily swayed. You are not desperate for attention. You are not begging for validation. You move from self-respect, not from fear. This is why emotional discipline is leverage. It changes the balance of every interaction. The one who remains centered commands the dynamic, not through manipulation, but through inner strength. When you can stay calm in the face of uncertainty, you allow others to reveal their intentions naturally. You don't react out of panic. You don't fill the silence with over-effort. You don't give more than you receive just to keep someone close. You create space. Space that forces people to choose you intentionally, not by convenience. But emotional discipline requires practice. It requires the patience to sit with feelings that are uncomfortable. It requires the courage to tolerate silence without creating unnecessary drama. It requires the humility to recognize when your emotions are trying to sabotage your standards. It requires self-awareness to pause before making decisions driven by fear. It requires strength to hold back when your insecurity wants to pull you forward. Mastering this isn't easy. It's work. It's daily, internal work. But every bit of that work builds power. Emotional discipline also reveals truth. When you stop overgiving, you see who steps up. When you stop chasing, you see who pursues. When you stop trying to prove your worth, you see who truly values you. Emotional discipline removes the illusion and reveals the reality of your connections. And even when that truth is uncomfortable, it is always better than living in delusion. With emotional discipline, you stop allowing temporary feelings to sabotage long-term goals. You protect your dignity. You preserve your standards. You maintain your clarity. You build your life on intention instead of impulsiveness. Others may move fast and break themselves in the process, but your strength is steady, and steady strength wins every time. It wins in relationships. It wins in ambition. It wins in self-respect. People feel safest with the one who can regulate themselves. They trust the person who doesn't panic. They admire the person who can stay grounded when emotions run wild. They are drawn to the person who doesn't collapse under pressure. Because emotional discipline is rare, and rarity creates fascination. Emotional discipline is the ultimate leverage. It is how you rise above the noise. It is how you maintain power without force. It is how you protect your self-worth, attract better connections, and navigate life with clarity instead of chaos. Master it, and the world will treat you differently, not because you demanded respect, but because you earned it within yourself first.